Hey guys, welcome back. And in this video today, we are going to extend our Firebase authentication application to store the user profile data that we have inserted through the registration form. Okay, so if I just show you the register activity that we have here in the XML file that I have given full name, email, password, and phone number. But if you have already created this application watching my previous two videos on Firebase authentication, then you might have noticed that we can't really save the full name, phone number, but only email and password is saving in the Firebase database, right? So that is because the Firebase authentication uh, service is different from the Firebase database, right? So Firebase provides separate module for the authentication system, so they are not connected with each other. So if we want to store the full name and other information about the user, then we need to create a separate database in the Firebase console. So we have two database available in the Firebase, that is Firebase real-time database and Firebase Firestore database. So Firebase real-time database is kind of old now, and they have really recommend us to move forward with the Firebase Firestore app. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how to connect our Authenticator app with the Firebase Firestore, and we are gonna store all the user information into our newly created Firebase Firestore app, Firestore database, and we're going to retrieve that data and display in the our dashboard as a user profile data. Okay, so I hope you are going to learn something, and if you are just watching these videos for the first time, then I recommend you to go back and watch two more videos that I have uploaded on the channel that shows how to create this application that you are seeing here in the screen. So this is just a simple authentication app which will allow a user to create account and log into the account using that information. Okay, so let's go ahead with the our user profile application that so to be able to save the data into the Firebase store, first we need to connect the Firebase Firestore database into our application. This is exactly similar to the how we have connected Firebase authentication service into our application. So let's go to tools and into the Firebase. Here we'll have the option to connect our application with Firebase Firestore. So if you scroll down at the bottom, you'll see there is one options called at Firestore, and click on read, and here you can see our app is already connected that we have done previously. Now I'm gonna add Cloud Firestore to our application, so let's click on this, and it will add the required dependencies in our application. So accept the changes, and it will start the Gradle sync. Once that is done, we are good to go. Okay, the Firestore cloud is connected with our application now, so we can start working on the Firestore to save our database, save our data into the cloud Firestore, right? So here you can see a few instructions how we can create the instances of Firebase Firestore database, and how we can insert the data into our collection of users into the Firestore. So if you don't know how Firebase work, Firebase database work, or if you are not familiar with Firebase real-time database, then I'm just gonna give you the brief introduction on how these Firebase cloud work. But this is just an introduction that might help you to understand a little bit. But if you want complete tutorials on that, you can go and watch few others video on the YouTube, or if you want I can make more tutorials on that in the future, so let me know in the comment. But for now I'm gonna go ahead and show you one picture here. So this is the picture provided by the official Firestore blog. Here you can see this is the database model of one restaurant app, and here we have collections and documents. Okay, so this is the whole document, sorry, this is the collection of restaurants, right? So inside that we have the branches, so each branch is called as a document. So each document can have multiple collections. So let's say this restaurant have one branch, and that is denoted by the document, and that branch can have the multiple collections, and that multiple collection can have the multiple documents. So this is the hierarchical way of storing the data in the Firebase Cloud Store. This is how we gonna access the data, or how we going to store the data in Firebase Cloud Store, right? So first we're gonna create the collections, and inside that we are going to create the document. And if we want to store more data into that document, then we can create more collections and more documents. Okay, so this is the hierarchical way of saving the data in the Firebase Cloud Store. Okay, so enough of this. I hope you got a little bit of idea how this hierarchical mode of storing data works here. As far as our application is concerned, what we're gonna do is, let me just minimize this. In our case, user is the collection. So users is a collection that will store all the users that will registered in our application, and each user have a unique ID, UID, that is allocated by the Firebase Authentication module, and we're going to use that ID as an identifier for the each user. That ID is a document for our users. Okay, so user is a collection and the user ID is a documents. So, and inside that document we can store the information of that particular user. Whenever we create the user using the Firebase Authentication module, they'll automatically assign new UID, right? So I'm gonna show you. If I go to my Firebase console, here you can see I have multiple users, and here you can see the unique ID for every users, right? So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna create one collection of named users, and inside that we are gonna create one document using this user ID, and each document will have the information about the particular user, right? So that is how we are going to store the data in the Firebase Cloud Store. Now I'm gonna create one collection in our Firebase Firestore database. So let me go here in the database section, and if you are clicking on the database section for the first time, it will give the options to create the database. So let me create database, and here you'll see two options. One is in test mode and another one is production mode. So we're gonna go with the production mode. We have already implemented the authentication system, so we can actually denied or give the permission based on the authentication. But if you are starting with the test mode, then we are allowing user to read or write the data into our database without authenticating them, so that is more risky. So let's go with the production mode. Click on next, and here you can select the region. That doesn't matter, just click on done. Okay, now here we have the options to create the collections. Now the Cloud Firebase database is created. So just to make sure, here you can select the Cloud Firestore or the real-time database, but we are not using the real-time database. So you can see it is displaying the Cloud Firestore. So now this part is done. Let's go to the Android Studio, and here now we can start inserting the user data into the Cloud Firestore. Before starting storing the data in the Firebase Cloud Store, I want to give you the idea how this works, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to store the data as soon as the user create the new account, right? So because whenever user is creating a new account using the register activity, they are providing the full name and phone number and email and password, right? So what I'm gonna do is, as soon as they create the new account and data are valid, I'm gonna store the full name, email and phone number into our Firebase Cloud Store, and we're gonna use the unique user ID as a ID for that particular user. To do that, we need to go to the register.java file where we are handling the registration of the user. So as soon as the user is created here, I'm gonna, before we start the new activity here, I'm gonna store the data. So that we can store the data in the Firestore and we can access that afterwards, right? So but before that, I need to get the data. Okay, so here we have full name, email, phone number, right? So these are the variable that contains the data that is submitted by the user. Before I was just retrieving the email and password, but now I wanna retrieve the full name and the phone number as well. So let me write the same code here to retrieve the full name, and full name is the variable name we have, dot get text dot to string. We can trim if we want, but we don't really want to trim it. Okay, so string, and it is for the phone number. Even the phone number is the integer type, but we have stored them as a string. So mphone dot get text dot to string. Okay, now this full name and phone number is stored in this variable. So I'm gonna go and start the procedure of storing them in the Firebase Cloud Store. But before that, we need to create the instance of the Firebase Firestore. So I'm gonna go here, Firebase Firestore, fstore, and I'm gonna import the class, alt enter, and it will import the Firebase Firestore class. Here you can see. Now using this, we can create the collections and documents and store the data, right? Okay, as soon as the user is created, I'm gonna insert the data. If I go to the Firebase console here, you can see we don't have any collections and documents. So we need to create that first. So now we need to create the collections and the documents. So as I said before, we are gonna create the collection called as users, and inside that we are gonna have the document which is having the user ID as in identifier. Okay. So to do that, I'm gonna have to create one more variable called document reference, using which I can refer to the particular document inside the Cloud Firestore database. Okay, I'm gonna give this document reference, and now I need to use the instance of the Firestore database that I have created before, and I need to create the collection and refer to the particular collection. So in our case, it is users. Since we don't have this users collection in our database, it will automatically create that users collection for us. Okay, so now I'm gonna create new document, and inside this I need to pass the user ID, right? And user ID that I have not created yet, so I'm gonna create the one um, variable type string, which is user ID, and I'm gonna save the user ID of our current user that is registering, and I'm gonna save the user ID of the current user. So I'm gonna do that by using user ID equals to, by using the current instance of the Firebase authentication. So fauth current user that get UID. So these are the methods that is used to retrieve the user ID of the currently logged in user or currently registered user. Okay. So now using this user ID, I'm going to create the new documents. Inside that document, I'm going to store the data. So to store the data, we can proceed with various methods, but one of the popular method to create the data is by using the hash map. Okay. So we're going to create the user data using the hash map, and we're going to save that data to the our Firebase Cloud Store. So let me create the new map which will have the type string and object, string as a key and object as the data. Okay, and I'll just say user new hash map of type string and object. Let me import this. Okay, now inside this I'm gonna insert the data, so I can use this user map object to insert the data using put method, and we need to give the key and the data. Okay, so first thing I'm going to give is full name, so I'm going to just say f name, and I'm going to retrieve the data that user have inserted, so that is stored in the variable that we have created here and we called it as full name. So I'm going to give that same variable here, so full name, and second one is phone number, or I want to save email as well, so let me just say email, and let me this is email. So this key will act as the attribute name in our document, so be careful what you give here. So if you want your attribute to be more easily readable, then you can give something else. Okay, so we'll see that later in the video how this is going to affect in the Firebase Cloud database. So user dot put, I want to put the phone number, so phone and the phone number. Okay, so if you want your application to have more data about the user, then you can create the more field in the register activity here, and you can retrieve those data, and you can create the new uh, user object here, right? You can create the new data here and insert that into the map, and you can insert that to the Firebase Cloud Store, right? So now our user map object have all the information that I want to store: full name, email, and phone number. So now I can actually start inserting that to the Firestore Cloud database, right? So to insert into the cloud database, I'm gonna need to use the document reference object, and we'll have one variable called set, and here we can set the user as the information, and we can use one event handler to notify us if the operation is successful or not. So I'm gonna use one add success listener event handler, new on success listener. If the operation is successful, I wanna display something, or I wanna create one log message that will say, let me create the one tag for this, Control Alt C, and it will create the constant for us. Okay, so now I wanna display something, user profile is created for, and I wanna give the user ID. Okay, so this will log the success message in our logcat. Okay, so I'm gonna run this app, and I'm gonna show you how these things work exactly in the Firebase console. The app is running now, so let me show you how it looks like right now. So this is our registration activity, and now I'm going to create the new user, and now I'm going to register the user. So before doing that, I'm going to go here and show you what our database contained here. So it contains nothing. So let me register the app now. Click on register on the app. Okay, our app crashed because let me show you the message. It says we try to invoke the object on a null object reference, right? So that happens because I created the Firebase Firestore variable here, but I forgot to instantiate that. So let me go here and instantiate the Firebase Firestore variable. So fstore equals to Firebase Firestore get instance. So this is how we instantiate the Firebase Firestore into our application. So now I'm going to run this application again, and we should be able to register the new user. Okay, I'm going to create the new account now. So let me give the name, email, I'll just give some random password and some random phone number. Okay, So these are the details. Now I'm gonna register. So if I click on register, you can see the user is created. So now let's go to the Firebase console and see if the collection and the document is created or not. So let me go to the Chrome here and let me refresh this. Our collection was not created here, and to debug I added these add-on failure listener here, and just to check what is going on. And if I run the app again and try to register the new user, and I got this new exception message which says the permission is denied, missing or insufficient permissions. Okay, so once after we create the Firebase Firestore database into the console, we need to set our rules, right? So I forgot to set the rule here. So if I create the database in production mode, automatically it will be in read only state. Okay, we cannot write the data. So that's why if you see here, it says allow read write if false, right? So here we need to make this some correction to allow the user to write the data if they are authenticated. Okay, so I'll make the changes. So if request dot auth is not equals to null. Okay, so what does this mean is that if the user is authenticated, then we are allowing them to write the data. If not, then we are not allowing them to write the data into the database. Okay, so this is the changes that we need to make. Now I'm going to publish the changes. Okay, the changes are public. Now let me go here and in my application I'll log out from here and I'll create the new account. I'll just give something. Okay, I'll give the password and I'll type some random phone number. Okay, now I'm gonna register and we'll see what happens. Okay, it says user is created, and here you can say simultaneously the unsuccessful message is displayed in the logcat. User profile is created for the user and some user ID is displayed because I have used some user ID here. Okay, so now if we go here and in our data section of our database, now we can see our collection. Okay, so this user collection is created because I have given the users collection name here, and since it was not there before, it created that automatically. So next time when new user registered, it will automatically use this collection, and new document is created that is using our user ID, and that user ID have the email, phone, full name and the phone number that I have given here. Okay, here using the map object, right? So this is how we insert the data into our Firebase Firestore from our authentication form. And now we'll learn how to retrieve this data into the activity and display them into our main activity.